Welcome back, everybody, to the next episode. What we're going to do today is we're going to finish off the stringers for the ski locker, prepping for the flooring. It's pretty exciting. We're getting closer and closer to the end of this project, and I'm super glad we're getting to that point. Here's some things you're going to need if you don't already have. This thing is going to be super handy. Back in the day, these were pretty expensive for most people, 100 plus. Now you can find them at your local hardware store for less than 40 bucks. Definitely get this when you're doing stringers and whatnot. These laser levels are going to make, well, they're not a laser level. It's a measuring device. It will measure the distance down to the 16th. This is made by Bosch. This is a really super good one to get, and it just kind of helps with getting some real precision measurements versus having to use a tape. I've got the longer popsicle sticks as well. Those will come in handy as you're doing the stringers because the stringers are super long runs, and having to use the smaller ones, which I had been doing before to make the cutouts for around these edges, kind of necessary for that. But when you start getting into the longer runs, you definitely want to get to the bigger popsicle sticks. A user of mine had mentioned going to Walmart and picking up a huge pack of them, and you can find these for super cheap over there, so shout out to him for that recommendation. Also, make sure you got your glue gun handy and a good pair of shears to cut the glue sticks as you need. Let's take a look at my operation here. So you can see on the right stringer, we've used the larger popsicle sticks. We've got a brace, and we've also made the top terminate right at the top of that prior stringer. Let's go to the left side. You can kind of see the same as well. If you notice, we don't have a top portion of the stringer cut out, and that's on purpose because we're going to use a straight edge between the top of that point to the back. Speaking of the back, let's take a look at how these stringers terminate on the back side. All right, take a look at this. So what I found was it's like a 1x2, and the thing is with this 1x2 is it simulates the bottom of the flooring that I'm going to put in there. That's where I'm going to take all my measurements. So that's why I use that versus like a 2x4, something along those lines. The other thing too is you see that I have my level. This is the same level that I used to level up the back of the boat up there, and the same level I used for the front. Same level as well that I used to level up the flooring. So as long as you're using the same level throughout, it's not that big of a deal. The reason I mention the level really at all is some people will say for a 6'4" run like I have here, why not use a longer level? It's a valid argument, it's a valid point. You could in fact use a longer level if you want to get it more accurate. It would definitely be more accurate than this little 2-foot level. However, my 4-foot level is made out of steel. It's a little bit heavier, and this one's lighter. It's made out of aluminum, so it doesn't cause the 1 foot by 6'4" in my application. It'll vary on yours, but it just makes it where it doesn't sag as much, and it's consistent. I use it throughout, so it's good. It's good, nice and level. You notice I indexed it, so you write left. That's the top. Which way is forward? Which one is the right? And then I also made notches for where the level had been sitting. So if I had to remove the level for whatever reason, everything goes back in the same exact manner, and we'll make sure we keep it level. You can see here, the popsicle sticks continue, and then they bottom out at the very bottom of this 1x2. Same thing over here. They bottom out. Let me show you some tricks to figuring out what's what here. So you'll notice there was a bulkhead already in place when I had ripped it out originally. It's what helped encase the fuel tank, which you'll see over here. You may not have a fuel cell that sits beneath the floor. You may have one that like sits in the corner somewhere, but for those who have a fuel cell that sits in the bottom, this is kind of a helpful little tip. If not, what you'll do in your situation, if you don't have a fuel cell under the floor, you just keep running your stringers for 8 foot, because that's your typical marine grade plywood length is 4 foot by 8 foot. So you want to run your stringer as long as you can. Which that's actually what we're going to do on these farther runs that don't run into the fuel cell. These are going to be run for 8 foot. So if you don't have a fuel cell like I do and you're not doing a bulkhead in the middle, you can kind of disregard this part a little bit. But you probably shouldn't in some ways as well, because everyone typically has a ski locker of some type. So if you have a ski locker, this is still going to be applicable. You won't be making this little turn for a fuel cell. You'll just be continuing straight back. So just keep that in mind. So what are we going to do next here? What I've done obviously is leveled out this 1x2, which keep in mind this is actually only a 1/2 inch. So we leveled it out first, and that's where that laser level came into place. I shot a line from one side, which also happens to be where this terminates, from one side to the other. And the reason why that's important is you want to make sure to try to follow the lines, the existing lines of where you've already cut out, because they've already laid up a lot of extra old fiberglass here and here. So you kind of want to keep it in this material. It just kind of helps save when you're redoing everything, and you're not wasting extra buildup along these edges trying to create another line. Plus you got to consider too, look how much material has been removed here, and this could be considered a weak point in some ways. So the best thing to do is, put your wood there, your marine grade plywood, and then you'll see when we build up the peanut butter, we'll actually get it into these little crevices here, and we'll glass it, making this little section here a lot stronger than it would be as if you just ran plywood right here, for example, because then this will flex and you could break it right here. So we want to try to strengthen these joints up again. If you're not planning on using the same lines like I'm using here, go ahead and fill this in, smooth it out, run some 1708 on it if you're running fiberglass, or run a sheet of Kevlar, put some peanut butter in there, cover it with Kevlar, and then start your new joint wherever you're, if you're planning on changing it up a little bit. So just a quick little tip there. All right, so going back to our little project here, you'll see, if you notice, this is kind of stuck in place. I took a little bit of glue from the hot glue gun and kind of glued it pretty level. So what that'll do is it'll help keep the template from flying one way or the other down there. And then also, if you can, try to use your square to make sure, according to your perfectly level floor, that these stringers or popsicle sticks right now are also square. Because if they're not, you're going to run into issues when you change the degree, the angle here. So keep that in mind. I'll show you real quick what I mean. Okay. So I got my square. I'm going to run it along the 1x2. And you'll see it's a little too long, but you can actually use it to kind of capture the right angle of where these popsicle sticks are supposed to go. So it's pretty close. Not bad. Just keep that in mind as you're going through this. You want to make sure this angle is pretty close. I believe that's where it was originally. Yeah, you can see it's just about there, maybe 1/8 of an inch off, a little bit of 1/16. Not a big deal. As we progress over here, done the same thing. Now keep in mind, this side is going to be a little bit more tricky because we've actually cut through the floor right here. So as I'm putting in the stringer for this side, you'll see I'm actually going to run kind of what we were talking about a little bit earlier here to strengthen these joints up. I'm actually going to run at the bottom of the stringer Kevlar. It'll have Kevlar at the bottom, and then it'll have Kevlar obviously on the sides when this gets boxed in and whatnot. But we definitely have to run Kevlar at the bottom because this piece is physically cut and compromised, so we need to actually patch this up. Maybe run 2 coats of Kevlar, I don't know, we'll see. I think one will be good, but putting 10 ounces on it also wouldn't hurt. We'll kind of gauge that on when we get to it. So you'll see here the very tip or the bottom of the floor would match up right where the stringer is. And just keep in mind, we're going to run a straight edge from this point here all the way to that forward point over there. And that will give us what we're going to consider a super flat, super straight angle all the way across. Otherwise, you would have to run a 1x2 all the way across and use it, but it's not necessary. This is the best way to do it. Let's go ahead, since we got it all done, let's go ahead and undo this glue and we'll take a look. Pretty easy, right? Like I said, you definitely need to use the longer popsicle sticks. Other thing too is you want to make sure, I mean, you'll figure it out too when you bring it in, but just to make sure, you want to make sure make a designation on it. So like this is the left side. And then it also wouldn't hurt to grab your marker and show which side is forward. Not a big deal, like I said, you'll have one, but on your boat it may be pretty tough writing with one hand. So just write FO. I'm right-handed normally, so that's kind of tough. But anyway, forward and my little weird little arrow right there. But you can kind of see if you're to guesstimate, like maybe make just a straight angle at the bottom. It's not quite straight. I guess you could get away with it if you wanted to, but I wouldn't do it. This just so you know, this took me, I don't know, maybe like 10 minutes to do. It took longer for the hot glue gun to get hot than anything. Let's go ahead and loosen this one up. This one, in my infinite knowledge, I decided to glue on both sides, which was completely unnecessary. Alright, just gotta pop all that extra glue off. We'll do the same thing here. I probably already know which way is forward, but I'm just gonna draw an arrow on that one. And why not just put an F? How about that? Okay. So that is my template for the ski locker stringer on the right side. You'll see I wrote an R up there. What we'll do next, after we cut these out using marine grade plywood, we're actually going to take the actual stringers. And what's going to be different about the templates versus the actual stringers is we are actually going to screw the stringers that go in here, the stringers that go for the ski locker, we're actually going to screw it into the bottom of this 1x2. And the reason we're going to do that is because we want to make sure as this is drying, because you can imagine this is quite the run here. It's a real long possibility of it turning and cocking to one side or the other, so we want to make sure we stabilize it as if it was already connected to the floor. So it'll be a temporary stainless steel screw that comes down, and it'll keep everything. So as we're working forward to the rear here, we'll be able to get everything. Plus, you got to remember too, is I have to add the extra little bundle of joy of needing to fix this little crack here that runs probably about 2 feet over. So I'll need to make sure this is perfectly straight, level, so I don't have to worry about that and try to fix this crack real fast. Because remember, epoxy cures real quick. If you're using polyester resin, probably not that big of a deal. But anyway, let's go ahead now and get these ski locker stringers cut, and let's see how it looks. Okay, so you'll see here how I traced it out, and you may be thinking, why not utilize the straight edge from the transom cutout that we used earlier? And the reason why you don't want to do that is you want to save the longest runs in terms of your stringers for the 8-foot runs, the longer runs. This is just for the ski locker. So when you're considering cutting out pieces of plywood while utilizing existing wood that you have, save the longer runs, straighter runs, for your 8-foot ones. It just makes more sense that way. You'll have, if you used 2 3/4-inch sheets like I did, you'll have 2 of these sheets laying around that you'll be able to utilize. So anyway, you can see why I just used a cutout way above that so I could still get a long straight cut. Okay, so now that we've made the cut, or more specifically, we've traced it, you'll notice there isn't a top line. So that's when your super long level comes into place. And what we're going to do is run that level from that tip that we were talking about earlier, just about right there, to the tip up here, right about there. And we'll just trace a line all the way across the top. Okay, came out pretty good. Top edge is real straight. Sanded all the edges along the bottom, sides, back. Make sure I indexed it too. You do the same so you don't forget which side goes where. But that's pretty much it for the right side. Let's do the left side. Now one thing to notice here, I switched 3/4 pieces or sheets of plywood here. This is the other side that I used to cut the transom out because there's not quite enough room out of the other sheet to get that other bulkhead, or sorry, the other stringer cut out. So I'm going to go ahead and use the other sheet because I know it'll still allow room for this top piece up here. All right, so here is the left and right stringers cut, sanded, just as if I used the templates perfectly, as you would expect. No issues there. 3/4-inch Aquatech. Super happy with this type of wood, I'm telling you. If you're thinking about using exterior grade plywood or something along those lines, definitely don't do it. Spend a little bit of extra money. Get the marine grade plywood. You can tell just in the feel of it, it's super straight, sands perfectly. Anyway, on that note, let's call it good on this episode. On the next episode, you're going to see me install these, and we'll work on getting the bulkhead for the ski locker done as well. Start working on getting some of the epoxy and Kevlar applied. As always, subscribe if you're not already subscribed to my channel. Like the video if you thought it was helpful. Leave me some comments, let me know what you think. Catch you on the next episode. Have a good one, everybody.